Hi everybody, good morning. Welcome back to Sunday School. Now, as I told you a while ago, we were doing Old Testament stories. And just to recap, we've done creation, where God creatively and lovingly made everything. Then we did Noah and the ark, and we talked about the fact that God had been very angry, but he promised not to destroy his planet again and the people in it. To save them. Then we talked about Moses and the fact that he led the Israelites out of Egypt, out of slavery, and he was able to part the sea. And today we're going to do our second part of Moses. Now, Exodus is a very long Bible book in the Bible, and it talks about a huge part of the Israelite history. And so it has needed 2 sessions to go through. And today we talk about one part of it that people are very familiar with, and that is the 10 Commandments. So Moses had been leading the Israelites through the desert for a very, very long time. They were out there for 40 years. They had gone through ups and downs. They had run out of food, they had run out of water, there were probably children being born and elderly people dying. So there had been lots going on in all this time, and sometimes the Israelites got quite cranky and frustrated with Moses for having taken them out of Egypt, and they kept saying, you know what, we would have been better off just dying in Egypt than wandering around this lonely part of the world for all these years. But Moses, having been given instructions by God, insisted that they continue to find their land that God had promised, their inheritance that God had promised. And so we come to a point at which the Israelites are probably not doing the right thing. And they come to a mountain called Mount Sinai, which is in the middle of a desert. And there Moses goes up to talk to God, because mountains are seen as a place where you can get closer to God. And so he goes up onto Mount Sinai with a few other people, and he gets what we now call the 10 Commandments. Now, boys and girls, if you look at Exodus, he gets the 10 Commandments, and then he gets like a whole bunch of subheadings for each 10 commandment. So when he says you honor your father and mother, there's like a whole bunch of rules that goes underneath that about what that means and what that looks like. When it talks about you shall not kill, there's like another whole bunch of rules about what that means, even down to the fact that they talk about what punishment you should get if you own an animal that kills somebody else. So boys and girls, we talk about the 10 Commandments, but they're almost like the major headings for 10 Commandments. And then God outlined to Moses a whole bunch of subheadings that explains it all in much, much, much greater detail. So, boys and girls, after he's given the 10 Commandments to the Israelites, and the Israelites have all gone, yep, we definitely will do all those things that God has told us to do, he then goes up Mount Sinai again, and for 40 days he disappears into basically this big thick cloud of cloud and smoke, and he's gone for 40 days. Now, remember, the Israelites don't always do the right thing, get a bit frustrated, and eventually towards probably the end of the 40 days, they're like, we don't know what's happened to this Moses guy, he's disappeared, we're still just stuck out here. How about, and he says to Aaron, how about Aaron, you just make us a god? And so Aaron builds them a god out of the gold from all their jewelry, their earrings or their rings or whatever. So Aaron builds their god, and they start to worship it. And God gets angry straight away. He's like onto it. And he sends Moses back down. But before Moses goes, he pleads for his people. And he says, come on, God, I know they're doing the wrong thing, but please be gracious to them. Don't get angry. Don't destroy all of them. So he's saying, don't do a Noah's Ark. I will fix this. And God agrees, and Moses goes back down to his people and rouses on them. He also destroys the gold, and he sprinkles the gold into the water and makes all his people drink the water. So really, all that gold is gone. So boys and girls, what does that mean for us today? Well, it means a couple of things as usual. One, don't put other things ahead of your relationship with God. Okay? He doesn't get angry like we read about in the Old Testament anymore. But certainly he would be very disappointed because he loves us and he wants that love returned. So don't put other things ahead of it. And some of those other things that we sometimes put ahead of it is, money, things, iPads, whatever. Sometimes we even put busyness ahead of it. We kind of get so busy in our lives that we forget to take time out and spend it with God. We can sometimes put what other people think we should do ahead of God. So Aaron built the god out of the calf god out of the gold because that's what other people wanted him to do. But I think he would have known better. So there are a number of ways in which we forget to put God first. And the story is about putting God first. And then the other thing that this story tells us about is that there were so many rules about how to behave appropriately set down by God. But in fact, the New Testament comes around and it teaches us that if we love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul and mind, and love our neighbours as ourselves, we will actually have all that stuff covered. And so this whole Old Testament eventually leads us into knowing and understanding the New Testament a little bit better because of the way Jesus came and revealed God through him. All right, boys and girls, let's say a prayer. Dear Lord, sorry for when we put other things ahead of you, and we pray that you will help us to keep in mind that your laws are good laws, and that if we love you and love the people around us, we'll probably be doing okay. Amen. All right, boys and girls, next week is our last week on the New Testament stories, and we're going to do a good one about a giant. See you then. Bye.